Alexander grew up on the outskirts of a modest settlement named Berezovsky, tucked away in the vast expanses of northern Tuguria. His father and grandfather had worked at the local depot for many years, and the railroad for their family was more than just a means of transportation. It was a genuine link between people and their destinies. From an early age, the boy was fascinated by steel giants, locomotives, and dreamed that one day he would drive his own train. When Alexander grew older, he went to study in the city of Solnechny. The noise and bustle of the metropolis stood in stark contrast to the quiet nature of Berezovsky. But he longed to return to snowy vistas and to the local depot he knew so well. After receiving his diploma, he came back to the settlement and soon became a train driver's assistant. Over time, he was entrusted with a freight locomotive. Now he transported wagons laden with timber and building materials across the entire region, marveling at the magnificence and danger of the Siberian winter. One day, during a run, Alexander noticed something unusual on the tracks. He looked closer and was stunned. A pack of wolves stood before the train. Wild animals typically scatter at the sound of a locomotive, but these did not budge an inch. Hoping to scare them off, the engineer sounded the horn. Yet they merely laid their ears back, forming a living barricade. Alexander had only seconds to decide whether to continue at full speed or risk an emergency stop. His gut told him to brake, although the train was very heavy and the chances of avoiding a collision seemed slim. With a dreadful screech, the train's wheels began to slow. Alexander feared until the very last moment that he wouldn't be able to stop in time. But the locomotive halted mere meters from the wolf line. The wolves stood, anxiously flicking their tails. Suddenly they parted, and a shocking sight met the engineer's eyes. An elderly man lay on the rails, handcuffed to the metal. It was Pavel Yefimovich, a local gamekeeper, widely known for his years-long struggle against poachers and for protecting forest animals. It seemed the wolves understood that their old defender was about to be killed under the wheels of a train, and they stood guard over him. Without hesitation, Alexander radioed the dispatcher, called the police and an ambulance. Armed with a crowbar, he left the locomotive. The wolves slowly retreated deeper into the forest, but did not disappear completely. Their eyes shone for a while on the edge of the trees. Alexander reached the gamekeeper and saw that he was barely conscious. To free the old man, he had to fetch special cutters, as the cuffs locks proved unbreakable. Soon medics and police arrived. Pavel Yefimovich was warmed up and taken to the hospital. After recovering from the shock, he recounted how, a few days earlier, he had discovered a poacher's lair. When they spotted him, they attacked, knocked him out, and then chained him to the tracks in a deserted spot. They hoped that the oncoming train would carry out their terrible plan. But the pack of predators, which the old man had protected from traps in the past, resolutely foiled the tragedy. News of the incident quickly spread throughout the region. People were amazed. Wolves and a man stood together to preserve a life in the face of ruthless cruelty. The police took on the pursuit of the poachers, soon caught them, and brought them to justice. Pavel Yefimovich recovered, often remarking that his life was saved not only by the decisive actions of the train engineer, but also by the gratitude of the wolves that came to their rescuer's aid. Alexander returned to his routine duties, but each time he passed that stretch of track, he slowed the train, as though looking for shadows of his unusual allies. At the depot, he earned even greater respect. Few would have dared to stop a massive locomotive in front of an entire wolf pack. However, the engineer himself simply smiled bashfully, repeating that he couldn't have done otherwise. His heart had pointed the way. Over time, the story about the wolves and the gamekeeper achieved legendary status in northern Togoria. Locals retold it to both friends and visitors, emphasizing that even in harsh conditions, there is always a place for humanity. Thus, the fates of man and beast intertwined along these snowy rails. And now, whenever Alexander and Pavel Yefimovich meet, they exchange warm smiles, the two of them linked by a terrifying yet marvelous tale of unity with nature. Many said that the moment the wolves stood before the train was like a sign. Not all is lost as long as there are people willing to risk their lives to save others. And wolves, despite their reputation as merciless predators, showed that living creatures are, at times, far more connected by unseen bonds of mutual help than one might think. Now Alexander knows. A railroad is not just the sound of a horn and the squeal of wheels. It is the path along which people carry cargo and destinies, and sometimes become heroes themselves. For many more years he drove trains across the boundless lands of Togoria, passing through his homeland's forests where wild wolves roam in the winter storms. But one thing he remembers clearly. Sometimes it is that sudden breaking in the face of danger that saves lives and brings hope to those who can hear the call of the heart.